Greetings everyone and welcome. I'm your host Captain Rye, and today we continue our museum ship video series, this time covering the USS Missouri. The USS Missouri was the third of 6 Iowa-class battleships ordered by the United States Navy in 1940. Her keel was laid down on the 6th of January, 1941, and she was launched a little over 3 years later on the 26th of January, 1944, being formally commissioned into service on the 11th of June of that same year. The Missouri's early World War II career would see her assigned to Task Force 58 and outfitted as the fleet flagship for that task force. She would sail with 2 carriers to Iwo Jima, where she would provide primary main battery support for the invasion landings on the 29th of February, 1945. Following her support task at Iwo Jima, she would be redirected to provide pre-invasion support and bombardment support for the landings at Okinawa on the 1st of April. During her time at Okinawa, a now famous picture was taken on the 11th of April 1945, that picture being taken moments before a kamikaze aircraft slammed into the stern of the ship just below the main deck. Fortunately for the Iowa herself, and unfortunately for the kamikaze pilot, that was right smack dab into the main armor belt of the ship that extended to the stern of the ship past gun turret number 3. Even to this day, the dent on the starboard side of the ship at the stern still remains, and you can take pictures of it if you will. What's most unusual about this particular kamikaze attack is that the body of the pilot actually survived the impact and was found on the stern of the ship. The crew wanted to simply throw the body of the Japanese pilot overboard. However, the captain was determined to provide full military honors and burial at sea for the Japanese pilot because, as he put it, that man was serving his country with honor and distinction as best as he knew, and following orders to the letter according to his superiors. Because the Missouri, among other U.S. ships, did not keep enemy flags on board, the crew of the Missouri hastily manufactured over the evening from spare materials a Japanese Rising Sun battle flag and performed the burial at sea the following morning. After the burial at sea, including a 21-gun salute from the Marines on board the ship, the crew was immediately called back to battle stations as a second kamikaze aircraft made its approach and attack run against the Missouri. Unfortunately for that aircraft as well, the anti-aircraft gunners were on point and were able to shoot down that aircraft before it made impact with the Missouri. Shortly after this incident, the Missouri would be transferred to the command under Admiral Halsey of 3rd Fleet. She would remain on station in support of the Okinawa campaign for a significant amount of time, finally departing for the home waters of Japan in July, where she would conduct shore bombardment raids against Honshu, Hokkaido. It was, however, the end of the Second World War where the Missouri would put herself in the spotlight, as she was specifically chosen as the ship in which the Japanese delegation would formally surrender to the Allied powers. The ship originally chosen was in fact one of the South Dakota-class battleships, the predecessor to the Iowa. Other ships in contention were the Iowa and Wisconsin as well. However, new President Harry S. Truman, hailing from the great state of Missouri, was given the honor by Congress when they changed the ship slated to be used to the Missouri because, according to rumor, they felt it would appease the new president and make him happy, which of course it did. Post-war through 1950, the Missouri would remain in active U.S. Navy service and participate in several operations, including diplomatic operations. One incident with the Missouri between the wars occurred on the 17th of January, 1950, while sailing seawards from Hampton Roads for a training mission. She ran herself aground. Normally, in this kind of situation, these ships are usually left where they lie and scrapped by junkers who will strip her down to her keel and then ultimately remove any remaining parts left below the waterline. However, given her historic stance and a concerted effort from the townsfolk in New England and the ship's crew herself, the ship was ultimately refloated from the sandbar she ran aground on the 1st of February and ultimately sent in for repairs. When the Korean War broke out in 1950, the USS Missouri was the only battleship in active duty service with the United States Navy because she was considered a training vessel for new crews. Because she was available, she was promptly sent to the region to engage in active combat operations in defense of the South Korean allies. Ultimately, she would arrive at Incheon on the 19th of September and provide bombardment support for Douglas MacArthur's amphibious landings in the region. The Missouri would serve with distinction through the Korean War on and off, swapping out with her sister ship, the New Jersey, and would ultimately fire her last salvo in anger in the war on the 25th of March, being formally relieved on the 26th of March, 1953, by the New Jersey as the flagship of the 7th Fleet. On the 7th of April, she departed Yokosuka for Norfolk. The Missouri was officially decommissioned from active service by the United States Navy at Puget Sound Naval Shipyard on the 26th of February, 1955, and would remain in mothballs at Bremerton. Unlike her sister ships, the Missouri would not be recommissioned for the Vietnam conflict and would continue to remain in mothballs until the Reagan administration provided a military buildup and opted to recommission and modernize all of the Iowa-class battleships. During the modernization, the Missouri had most of her 20mm and 40mm anti-aircraft guns removed, as well as 4 of her dual-purpose 5-inch secondary battery turrets. The ship would be upgraded and augmented with Harpoon anti-shipping missiles, armored box launchers, Tomahawk cruise missiles, and Phalanx close support weapons Gatling guns. These are also known as Sea Whiz and used to shoot down incoming bombs and missiles.
The ship is on fire.
Additionally, her radar and fire control systems were also upgraded, as well as giving her improved electronic warfare capabilities. In fact, an entire section on the inside of the ship was completely gutted and remodeled, giving her a CIC capability comparable to modern ships of the era. One aspect of her fire control system, however, that did not change was the analog gun control and targeting system of her primary 16-inch guns, as it was determined in 1984 that the analog system was still so accurate that the ship was more than capable of firing those guns with extreme accuracy to the maximum effect of their range. Combined with new radar spotting capabilities, the shell trajectories would only improve their accuracy at those ranges. With the situation developing in Kuwait in 1990, the Missouri was ordered to the Gulf in support of the coalition buildup in Saudi Arabia and eventual invasion and liberation of Kuwait and Iraq. On the 17th of January 1991, the Missouri would fire her first Tomahawk cruise missile, making her one of the first guided missile battleships in the world to fire a weapon in anger. This was also the first shots fired by coalition forces in Operation Desert Storm. She and her sister ship, the Wisconsin, would then move into the shallow waters just off of Kuwait within range of their 16-inch main battery guns, and on the 3rd of February would begin firing. This marks the last time a battleship of any nation has fired its guns in anger, and the last time that the Iowa-class battleships fired their guns. Following the successful completion and conclusion of Operation Desert Storm and the capitulation by Iraqi forces to the coalition forces, the Missouri and her sister ships were sent back to the United States, where they would ultimately be decommissioned. The Missouri meeting her decommissioning on the 31st of March, 1992 in Long Beach, California. The Missouri would once again be transferred to a mothball status within the United States Navy and transferred back to her old berth at Bremerton and Puget Sound Naval Shipyards. On January 12, 1995, she was formally struck from the Naval Vessel Register. In spite of attempts by citizens groups to keep her in Bremerton and be reopened as a tourist site, the U.S. Navy wanted to pair a symbol of the end of World War II with one representing its beginning. On the 4th of May, the Secretary of the Navy signed the donation contract that transferred her to a non-profit USS Missouri Memorial Association of Honolulu, Hawaii, and she would be towed from Bremerton on the 23rd of May to Astoria, Oregon, where she sat in fresh water at the mouth of the Columbia River to kill and drop the saltwater barnacles and sea grasses that had grown on her hull in Bremerton. She would then be towed across the Pacific Ocean and docked at Ford Island, Pearl Harbor, on the 22nd of June, just 500 yards from the USS Arizona Memorial. It is worth noting, in this particular case, that battleships at Battleship Row were all moored with their bows facing towards the harbor for easy exit. The Missouri, on the other hand, was moored with her bow facing inland and her guns poised to protect the sailors and Marines still entombed aboard the Arizona. As a museum ship, she is open to the general public most days of the week, with the exception of special occasions such as Pearl Harbor Day, where it becomes an invite-only situation. It is also worth noting that she is moored on an active naval base, and there are restrictions that do apply with gaining access to her. The Missouri Memorial does keep an active and ongoing preservation effort, as well as an effort to continuously open up and restore new sections of the ship for tourists to continue to explore. During my visit to the ship, there was an effort ongoing to restore and improve the primary mast and mainmast of the vessel, and this did prevent the ability to go up and tour the bridge of the ship, which would normally, under normal circumstances, be open to the general population to view. Other restoration projects at the Missouri currently include replacing its old wood teak deck with new wood and teak decking, and filling in the gaps of the teak decking with a waterproof rubberized membrane to prevent corrosion and rust of the steel hull. The Missouri is still technically considered free-floating, and should the need arise, she can be moved via tug and tow. And of course, should the US government ever actually decide they wanted to recommission the ship, they could, in fact, refire her boilers and get her back underway. However, according to staff at the memorial, it would cost the US government some $2 billion to recommission the ship, just getting it seaworthy and back up to date by modern military standards, when they could probably build a brand new battleship of equal power and better fire control capabilities for significantly less money. Now, for those seeking to get their hands on a piece of American history and test her mettle against some of the more famous enemy vessels of the time, including the mighty Yamato, the Missouri was available as a premium warship in World of Warships. She, at this current moment in time, is unavailable. However, I suspect she'll return once more to the premium shop. She's not available for actual cash purchase. However, you can pay for the gold to convert free XP and purchase her yourself the next time she becomes available. If you do get an opportunity to get your hands on the Missouri in World of Warships, I highly recommend her. Just owning a piece of great naval history and specifically American symbolism. However, if you do get your hands and you do plan on playing the ship, you can expect to find yourself in command of a fast battleship, 33 knots in a straight line. Reasonable armor, decent secondaries if you want to go that route, fantastic anti-aircraft capabilities, and of course, something that American ships have been known to have in World War II and at Tier 8 and up, or Tier 7, depending on the ship, is that valuable radar. And of course, at the end of the battle, regardless of how well you think you did, you'll probably still end up making credits, making the ship of value for money. Anyway, that's it for today's museum ship video. I want to apologize to my subscribers for the delay it took me in getting this video out. I've just been incredibly busy with a lot of life changes and of course somewhat a little bit lazy on actually producing this video. If you are interested in the museum ship herself and you're making a trip down to Hawaii, I highly recommend making a stopover in Honolulu if that's not your final destination, and visiting Pearl Harbor and getting yourself an opportunity to tour the ship in person. She is quite magnificent in all of her large steel glory. If you're interested in helping preserve this piece of American history, you can find the Missouri on her memorial website, and they are always accepting donations. And of course, your touring ticket also helps in her conservation efforts. And as always, I'll see you guys next time. This is Captain Rye, signing off.